Hey friends, and welcome to this solo episode of the Show Up season here on the Mary Marantz Show, a season where we remind you that we never asked you to be perfect. We just asked you to show up. So if you're new here, I went to law school before becoming a full-time photographer, before then becoming a full-time author. I am all about the pivot. And in law school, all of our classes had, in varying degrees of intensity, what is commonly referred to as the Socratic method, which basically just meant the professors would call on you at random and keep calling on you until you got it wrong in front of the entire class. It was this idea of being questioned to the point of failure. And I believe it was intended as a lesson to show all these tightly wound, overachieving A++++ world domination types that it was okay to not have all the answers. That this humility in not knowing, in fact, would create the kind of curiosity that would serve us well in our careers. But in real time, it was, of course, exactly as stressful as it sounds and as stressful as Elle Woods made it sound. I mean, there is a reason why Socrates was poisoned. If you didn't take a bunch of philosophy classes like I did, Socrates was the guy known for walking around ancient Greece in his Birkenstocks, doing his best impression of a temperamental 2-year-old. But why? But why? But why? He would ask the really tough questions about why people believed what they believed, and then, when they tried to turn it around on him to show that he couldn't defend his position any better than they could, he would then just say to them, "Hey, I don't know the answers, but at least I know that I don't know. And that puts me ahead of most people." So yeah, like I said, there was a reason he was given a hemlock mocktail. But back to law school and being called on in front of everyone. In the first few weeks of my civil procedure class, for example, we started off by studying this case called Tickle v. Barton, which just so happened to take place in West Virginia. So the professor decided to assign it to me to present the facts of the case for the entire class, since I was also from that state. It wasn't so bad, and I lived to fight another day after that presentation, but it just so happened that this case also turned out to be one of those black letter law cases that just kept coming up again and again and again all semester long. I can't tell you how many times that professor would snap his fingers and point to me, Brad Pitt and Moneyball style, and I'm just over here Jonah Hilling the whole time. You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah. And why is that still true, Mary? He'd ask. Tickle v. Barton, I'd shout from somewhere in the very back corner of the very back row. All the while praying, by the way, that he hadn't just actually asked me how my weekend had been or something like that. Tickle v. Barton. There's this thing that happens to us, I think, when we're afraid. At least it happens to me. It's like my brain is too busy screaming in decibels not suitable for human ears about how afraid it is, how not enough and disqualified it is before it even begins, for it to actually slow down and hear the question. It reminds me of this time in 4th grade during a spelling test when I missed hearing what the teacher said for one of the words. I got so panicked over missing that one word that I then missed the next one, and then those two dominoed into the one after that, all the way down the line until I got them all wrong. It's sort of like that. Our fear just dominoes into more fear. I can't tell you how many times driving down to class that first year, I had a pit in my stomach that I was pretty sure was turning into an ulcer. I just wanted to turn around and go back home, pull the blankets over my head, get the notes from someone in my small group. We do that, don't we? We get so afraid of failing that we would rather not show up to our own lives at all, present and accounted for, than risk showing up and getting it wrong, than risk putting ourselves out there not knowing all the answers. But what if we just slowed down long enough to really hear the question? Pretty soon, my fear turned into a different kind of not showing up. See, if you've never been to law school before, let me kind of break this down for you for a second. The 1L students, that's first-year law students, are known as being the hyper-intense, hyper-competitive ones, the ones with something to prove. They're the ones we call the gunners who go rushing at the professor at the podium after every class, trying to suck up just enough to get a recommendation letter for the Supreme Court. But by your 3L year, Chandler Bing style, could you be any more chill? All your graduation requirements are turned in, you've got a cushy clerkship or a law firm offer lined up, and at Yale in particular, where, little known fact, all the classes are actually pass-fail, it became sort of a running joke that 3Ls didn't even bother to show up to class anymore. They would just show up at the end for the final exams. Some of them were holding down full-time finance jobs in the city, and they were not about to commute to New Haven a few times a week for a class being graded pass-fail for something they had already accomplished. So 1L's super intense, 3L's so laid back to the point of hardly even showing up. And when showing up and getting the answer wrong was giving me the ulcer I mentioned above, I swung so hard to the other extreme that people in my own 1L class actually started mistaking me for a 3L. I was the queen of nonchalance. While everyone else was killing themselves, studying super hard, again, just to be clear, for a pass-fail class, I would make a point of telling them which movie I was going to go see. I would stroll in last to class or not at all. I would even sit in the lunchroom like this. Just super, super chill, lest there be any doubt at all just how nonplussed I actually was. It was the first time in my life that I wasn't giving 110% full throttle, full tilt, overachieving A++ effort. And for a short while, it was intoxicating and just a whole lot of fun. Just to give you an example, in law school, there's this very prestigious law review, REVIEW, law journal that is super competitive and everyone tries to elbow each other out of the way to get, which, by the way, is why lawyers wear elbow patches to begin with. And then there was also the Yale Law Review, REVUE, which was like our version of a Saturday Night Live end-of-the-year skit show, of which I became the director. Put it this way, while most of my classmates were on hour 12 in the library getting in an extra study time for our final exams, I was busy driving the 2.5 hours north to Cambridge, where I would don a 7-foot-tall lobster costume and attempt to get admitted to Harvard Law School as one of our video bits for Law Review. Not caring sort of started to become my whole identity. Making a big joke out of it sort of started to become my whole identity. But then I began to realize that all of this nonchalance was really just a sneaky subgenre of procrastination. In Underestimated, I talk about how the thing behind the thing, the fear behind the fear when it comes to procrastination, is this fear that no matter what I do, it will still never be as good as I want it to be. I talked about how procrastination becomes this double-edged cop-out. We use procrastination to make excuses for ourselves, running it to the extremes on either end. Future me always gets to say, just imagine how good it would have been if I'd had more time. And right now me always has a built-in excuse, a last-ditch fail-safe, on the off chance that this is the time I do actually fail. Like I said, it is this double-edged sword, this double-edged cop-out. On the one hand, it means I never have to journey to the edge and outer limits of my own abilities. Here, I picture a little wooden sign hammered into the desert sand that reads, "The end of what you are capable of," as a lone tumbleweed rolls by and bumps up against the dry, desiccated bones of every dream I ever quit too soon because I was not instantly good at it. Procrastinating means I never once have to come face to face with the realities of my own limitations. I never have to deal with the possibility that maybe I'm not as smart as I think I am or as talented as I one day hope to be. By numbing out and procrastinating, we never have to say to ourselves, this was as good as it was ever going to be. This is the full measure of how much talent you actually have. You had all the time in the world, you could have written down anything you wanted, and now you will be graded accurately on your fullest, best effort. Nobody wants that. Meanwhile, on the off chance that all our worst self-sabotaging, self-fulfilling prophecy fears finally come true, and this is the one time in our life when we actually do fail, we never have to internalize that into our identity. We're not people who fail at things. We're just people who were up against impossible circumstances this one time. It's a double-edged cop-out. We run it to the extremes on either end. Nonchalance works the same way, only it's trickier. It's trickier because you're not putting off doing the thing altogether. Technically, you're doing the thing. Technically, you're still showing up. If they were taking attendance, you were there most of the time. You're chasing the dream, but you're just not really giving 100%, which is still just a form of self-protection. If my worst nightmares ever did come true and I actually did fail out of law school, I could always say, well, I wasn't really trying. I wasn't actually being graded accurately on my fullest, best effort because I wasn't really giving 100%. And if I did do okay, then I could always say to myself, and just imagine how good it could have been if I had actually showed up and cared. I see this show up in my coaching clients and writing students all the time. They'll launch the thing, but then they'll not really tell anybody about it. Whoever finds it, finds it. I'm cool. Watch it, don't watch it, whatever. See how very chill and laid back I am about the whole thing. If we're being honest, we do this when we go to conferences, when we take a new class or course, when we show up on social media, when we start something new. We think we're protecting ourselves if we show up and do the thing, but then act like we don't really care deeply about it. We don't want anyone to see us really try, because that means we might have to also have them see our hearts broken if it doesn't work out. I liken this line of thinking to something else I did in law school, which was to reject people before they had a chance to reject me. I fully expected that every single one of my classmates were going to be full-on trust fund kids, which it turns out they were not, by the way, and that the second they found out how I grew up in a trailer in West Virginia, I wouldn't be good enough for them. So I made dang sure to let them know every chance I got just how little I cared about them or their opinion in a sort of aloof, I'm rubber, you're glue, you think you're going to reject me, but I reject you sort of way. And guess what? I missed out on really getting to know some very cool people because of it. I thought I was protecting myself, but all these years later, what it has left me with is regret. I wrote a post recently that said, never become one of those people who have to act unimpressed by everything. Get ridiculously excited over the little things. Have absolutely zero chill over life. I read an article once about Jimmy Fallon and how this man has absolutely zero chill about anything. The interviewer talked about how he was trying to ask all these questions of Jimmy over lunch at an Italian restaurant, and all Jimmy wanted to say was, "Ooh, this is such a good meatball. You have to try this meatball." It's like what we talked about in a previous episode with Harrison Ford. Side note, I feel like I'm going to try to work Harrison Ford into every episode now as a challenge to myself. But Harrison Ford's character on Shrinking, when he said that he just wants to suck the marrow out of what's left of this amazing life. This is the opposite energy of nonchalance. My friend Antonio Neves was on the show earlier this week, and we opened that episode talking about some advice that he gave me years ago that I still think about to this day, almost every single day. He said, you should be able to talk about your own stuff with the same enthusiasm that you would recommend Hamilton to someone else, or that Jimmy Fallon would recommend a meatball. And what he meant was stop acting so nonchalant when it comes to your own dreams, to the things that you have created and put out into the world. We're always the first ones to have zero chill about someone else's work. Today, we need to start showing up and doing that for the things that only we can show up and put out into the world. We believe our nonchalance will protect us, but I promise you, speaking from years of experience, you'll only end up regretting it in the end. Until next time, friends, this is the Mary Marantz Show, and welcome to your Show Up season.